So because I already have a video on Jane Foster Thor as well as Odin's son, I thought it might be fun to make a video on the elusive character known as Rune King Thor and how he ties into the ODIN-FORCE and Secret Wars. So as its name suggests, the ODIN-FORCE is the source of Odin's power and the basis for his position as the ruler of Asgard. In Thor Volume 1, issue number 349, Marvel tells us that in his youth, Odin and his two brothers had come face to face with Surtur, a fire demon who was said to bring about the end times of Asgard. Attempting to subvert Surtur's power by stealing the flames of destruction, Surtur engages in a battle with the group. While Odin's brothers are killed in the fight, their death creates a merging of their life forces with Odin himself. As a result, Odin is bestowed with the ODIN-FORCE, an infinite source of energy capable of manipulating entire universes and altering realities. Now again, touching back on my video on Ragnarok, we had talked about how this event centered on the death of Odin, Loki's war against Asgard, and the exile of Thor. To provide a bit of a refresher here, in Thor Volume 2, issue number 40, Odin had engaged Surtur in a battle on Earth alongside most of the Asgards. As one of the first stages of Ragnarok, which is the cycle of the death of all the Asgardians and their eventual rebirth, Surtur would amass an army and invade Earth with the intention of destroying it. In order to keep this from happening and prevent Ragnarok, Odin and Surtur fought one another and were believed to have died in the process. While the battle actually ended with the transitioning of Odin and Surtur to the space between dimensions, the purpose of this story was to simply remove Odin from the landscape of the mainstream Marvel continuity. And so with Odin gone, Loki initiated his plans for the continuation of Ragnarok by raising his own army composed of the enemies of the Asgardians, and during the initial battle, overpowering and banishing Thor. While Thor was able to rally what was left of the Asgardians in order to make preparations for their war against Loki and to take Asgard back, Thor also knew that in order to be victorious, his skill and strength alone would not be enough to overcome Loki. And so in an effort to compensate for this, he sought out to follow the same path Odin had taken in order to gain the ability to use the ODIN-FORCE as well as decipher the runes of Asgard. Venturing to a place called Hillstoff, which is referred to as the land where all things are seen, Thor is actually met with a physical manifestation of the ODIN-FORCE itself. With the ODIN-FORCE operating as a guide of sorts, Thor begins to undertake the journey to become the Rune King, which is accomplished in 3 stages. The first being sacrifice, the second being knowledge of the past, and the third being knowledge of the runes. Following the path of Odin by first approaching the Well of Mimir, Thor is told by the ODIN-FORCE that his first stage of sacrifice can only be achieved by sacrificing both of his eyes. The reason for this is that while the well only requires one eye to gain knowledge of the past, Odin is the only person to have ever visited the well. After sacrificing one of his eyes, Odin was able to gain knowledge of the past, but because walking the exact same path as Odin would not give him the power he seeks, Thor comes to the realization that he has to walk the path not traveled. And so after plucking out his eyes, the waters of the well begin to gush forward, and after partaking from the waters, Thor achieves the second stage of becoming the Rune King by learning of the entire history of Asgard and the 9 realms, from the time life first came into existence, up until the current moment. Now following this, Thor undertakes the final task in order to gain knowledge of the runes. Attaching a chain to Yggdrasil, the Tree of Life, Thor hangs himself for 9 days and nights, during which time he gains the knowledge necessary to decipher the runes of Asgard. While we're not told how this is possible or how these runes work, what we are told is that his knowledge of the past coupled with his deciphering of the runes allows him to know all things from the past and the future as well as control all things in the present. Again, this is very ambiguous here because Marvel doesn't really provide an exact definition of what these things mean. However, with his newfound power combined with the power of the ODIN-FORCE, Thor is reborn as Rune King Thor. Now while the rest of this event is covered in my Ragnarok video, the question becomes this: how powerful is Rune King Thor? Well, as stated, Rune King Thor has the full power of the ODIN-FORCE combined with the wisdom of the Well of Mimir and the knowledge of the Tree of Life. What this means is that Rune King Thor can warp reality and has knowledge of all things that will happen, all things that are happening, and all things that have happened. However, because this version of Thor only appears for 2 issues, his actions are confined to Asgard, and Marvel doesn't explicitly tell us how he compares to other beings, we're going to have to do a bit of twisting and turning to determine where he ranks in comparison to individuals like the cosmic entities. The first example Marvel gives us is Odin and Galactus. In the Mighty Thor issue number 5 in 2011, Marvel presents us with a scenario where Odin fights Galactus. While Odin is able to open up the battle by headbutting Galactus, the power required to achieve such a feat, that is to say to injure Galactus, resulted in Odin using the full power of the ODIN-FORCE. As a result, he fell into the Odin sleep in order to recharge his energies. However, almost immediately after this, Galactus gets up and seems almost completely unaffected by Odin's attack. Now, taking this example and bringing in the ones who sit above in shadow, who were abstract beings that fed off the death of the Asgardians and their rebirth during the Ragnarok event, Odin had previously attempted to kill these beings but was unable to do so. However, during the Ragnarok story, Rune King Thor was successfully able to kill them but died in the process. Now, the death of Rune King Thor was not due to anyone killing him, but was actually due to the fact that destroying the ones who sit above in shadow meant ending everything in Asgard, including Thor himself. And so using the transitive property, we can make a legitimate case here that if Odin was able to injure Galactus but not able to destroy the ones who sit above in shadow, but Rune King Thor was able to destroy the ones who sit above in shadow, then it stands to reason that Rune King Thor is probably around the same level as Galactus in terms of power, but again, this is a little bit of a stretch. Now, in terms of Secret Wars, one of the questions that I've been asking is whether or not the Rune King Thor in this series is the same as the Rune King Thor from Ragnarok. To be honest here, it's really just a guess, but it's entirely possible. Because characters like Frog Thor, a character named Simon Walterson from the mainstream continuity, exists in the Thor series, it seems that Marvel was simply just grabbing the most popular versions of Thor and throwing them in. However, this version of Thor bears a striking resemblance to King Thor, who arrived after the Civil War event was over and had rebuilt Asgard. But because Marvel hasn't offered a definitive explanation as to which version of Thor this is, at this point, it's really just kind of a guessing game. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and bring this video to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will catch you guys later. Peace.